All right. Thanks, everybody, for jumping in. We are recording a podcast here of NFT 365. We are doing it live on all the spaces as well as the social networks. We are live streaming it out on YouTube and LinkedIn and into our Facebook group, and also live streaming the audio out to Twitter Spaces. So thanks, everybody that's tuning in live. If you have to jump out early or you can't stay for the whole thing, just know this will be episode 215. So it'll be tomorrow's episode, daily podcast, kind of works out nice. So it'll be tomorrow's episode of the podcast out there in all of your favorite podcasting apps or here on YouTube, because we do keep a video for all of the episodes. So with that being said, I'm going to do just a quick pause, and then I'm going to jump into the intro, and then we're going to bring on our special guest. So 1 second. Welcome back to another episode of NFT 365. And, in this not only changing world and landscape that we have here in NFT space, the beauty of early adoption, the beauty of pushing the limits and really expanding what's possible here in Web3 and NFTs, powered by the blockchain, is that we get to experience a lot of firsts, and we get to not only drive cultural change, but actually be a lot of the leaders in how we can identify what change looks like, and also in many ways not allow like the norms of Web 2 and a lot of the things that kind of just became the way of life and things prior to be fully kind of seep into what we are doing here in Web 3. And so with that being said, part of the beauty of this is that we get to take on that vehicle of setting a new culture, setting a new standard of what we believe should be, how we kind of roll out, amplify people, how we create community, how we develop and design, how we treat everyone with love. As I'm, shout out to here being Pride Month with, love as a human right. And so for me, the beauty of all of this is that we do get to set the culture and we do get to establish new things, but there's also kind of that risk. And there's also that idea that, those of us that are first in many ways have to also be the ones that have to go through some of the trials and tribulations and a lot of the lessons learned. And it takes strong, character, strong belief in what we're doing, and also just the belief that together we can make an impact. And, for those on the podcast, we know that, the mantra of the podcast, here when we started was simply, we are greater than me. And it's that premise that, we have to first be our best me or our best selves before we can be a greater we. And as we look at that greater we and bring, worlds together, I'm excited to bring on, we actually all have two special guests today. So this will be a lot of fun. So I'm excited to bring on our first special guest, which will, we'll kind of set the stage here, and then we will jump into the conversation. Madi is the COO of Cryptochicks, as well as a really in-depth background. And Madi, I'm excited to have you on the podcast. Excited to have you here. We're going to have a lot of fun and bring in another special guest as well. But Madi, welcome to NFT 365.
Thanks so much for having me. This has been quite the production. I'm so impressed and really excited for the convo we're having today.
Well, I'm excited to have you on. And for my listeners, they're definitely familiar with Cryptochicks. It's one that I've talked about since the beginning. It's a project that I love and I hold dearly. And most know that with my wallet being compromised now 3 months ago, I had some NFTs that were stolen, and the community, the listeners actually rallied together to pull some ETH together. And they were like, which of your NFTs do you want us to save to be able to buy back from the hackers? And it was a no-brainer for me. It was my Cryptochick, the one that I initially flipped up to get. I got 3 early on. I kind of had my eye on one Cryptochick from the very beginning, and been blessed to have that now, and we were able to buy it back. And I thank our listeners for that. And we also had, I actually had to pull up the exact date, because this NFT space where everything feels like dog years in a way with how much time goes. But back on episode 78, we of course had M from Cryptochicks on the podcast, and it's without question one of our most popular episodes. So no pressure at all. There's no pressure. But I think part of it is the beauty of what we've all been creating and kind of evolving. But before we get into like our special guests and where things are and the project and things, I know you have a very, not only interesting background, but you have a very, your experience has really set you up for success in this space, as well as, opened some very beautiful ways that you can really help inspire, women in Web3 as well as tech. Give us a little bit about your background and how you found, NFTs and Cryptochicks as a whole.
Definitely. Yeah, so my career has mainly been in big tech, doing special projects, programs, products for senior leaders at Google and Facebook, now known as Meta. And I really enjoyed it. It gives me an opportunity to work on different things every day. You're coming into work and it's a completely different day than what you had previously. But that meant that it was anything from revamping recruitment processes to rolling out onboarding programs, continued learning and development programs, some strategic operations things as well. And it was a really interesting work experience, but it also meant that some of the things I got to work on, I was super, super passionate about. So I was involved in revamping Meta's Women in Product organization last fall. And I had so many conversations with women about this transition to Meta and Web3 and the metaverse. And some of these really influential, like kick ass women were saying things like, oh, I can't do that. It's the dark web, or I don't know how to get involved in that space. And it's too scary or intimidating. And I was like, oh my gosh, no, like if these really early adopters, influential women in tech, like just super kick ass knowledgeable women weren't able to kind of like get excited about getting involved in this space, the rest of us are so screwed. And so I started diving a little bit deeper into NFTs myself, the Web3 ecosystem, and trying to see what I could do with that learning development and strategic operations kind of niche to basically bring more women into the space. So my Twitter bio is personal mission to bring more women into Web3. And I really feel like that's a guiding North Star for me that's helped to anchor everything that I do in this space. And luckily, one of my first NFTs was a crypto chick, got involved in the community, got sucked in, just never came out the other side, still here.
Yeah, sucked in, and that's kind of how that's how this space works as well, right? That's kind of like the beauty of this arena, and I love that background too. And not only with Meta, and I think, let's face it, there's all from a standpoint of tech and people that are in the space, like, I mean, you're working for the biggest names in the space and really being able to drive the most change. And I think with driving change also becomes you have haters and you have lovers and you have kind of your welcoming NFT space. But I think the beauty is, like, and I will say, it's not all sunshine and rainbows here in this Web3 space, but I don't think there's anyone that I've come across that is saying, like, we don't see the opportunity to really not only open doors for women in Web3, but really kind of reset this, really unbalanced, equation that existed in all of the world, but especially in the, in the tech space, especially in the bleeding edge space. So I love that you brought that in. I'm curious, when that you kind of brought in early to Cryptochicks and you were, a member, we've had, Board Becky was on with what she did with, Fame Ladies. We had Data NFT, who was also on kind of, community driven and community leader. There's a different kind of connection, I think, early on, but then you're onto a role where you're driving leadership and you're teaming up with amazing leadership team. How did that go from, like, fan and believer in Cryptochicks to, I'm going to take on a leadership role and I'm going to realize that this is going to be much more than me holding a JPEG?
This is one of the things that I really enjoy talking about because it's truly a make your own destiny type situation, right? Web3 gives you an opportunity as a community member to raise your hand and say, this is something that's not going that well, or we could do this in a much more efficient way, or this could be a really big opportunity for us. And you can start providing value for the projects that you care about without even being on the team. Versus in Web2 or some of these more traditional industries, it's not really possible, right? Like, you can't provide value and work on a special project or product for Meta or Google until you work there, or for a startup until you're part of their leadership team. But here, there's this opportunity for you to use your voice and your talents, start providing value, and then teams will recognize that and bring you on, right? And so for me, I just kind of started saying, like, hey, I see that you're doing it this way. This is a way you could save a lot of time, or this could be done better. And I think you kind of just ingratiate yourself to the right people and you end up working and building partnership relationships across projects. And it really ends up working out. And this isn't a unique experience to me either, right? A lot of the people that I have, like, informal mentee mentor relationships with in the space, this is a pattern that we see time and time and time again. The one caveat that I give is it's much better in this situation to put all or most of your eggs in one basket than it is to spread across, right? So you should identify projects that you really care about and teams, missions that you really believe in, and then work to build up your kind of social and political capital with one or two projects rather than across, like 15 or 20.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I can speak from experience. We're buying an NFT every single day, right? So today is, 215 NFTs that we bought, in a row. And I am as about spread as about thin as you could possibly be when it comes to, activity. And so I will have people reach out and be like, Brian, you love this project. You talk about it all the time, but I don't see you active in there. And I'm like, I know I'm a little bit of a caveat to the, different scenario, but I think you're so right. Like when you do kind of lean in on that one or two or a couple projects, you're able to really connect with that culture and that community and kind of take on some of those roles.
And I think there's a difference between holding a lot of projects, believing in them in terms of social value versus you trying to build up a relationship with that team to eventually work with them, right? And so I imagine if there were one or two projects where you wanted to join the team or do something that was like a longer term partnership initiative, you would probably invest in like more heavily one or the two.
Without question. And even, like from my team, helping me kind of manage this world that we've created with this daily podcast, like there's certain projects that I'm like, we need these, announcements being posted in mine. So I get the notifications. Right. And for me, that's like, hey, I don't want to miss, out the opportunity, but I also, want to kind of believe in that, that greater good. And, Cryptochicks for me, I've been very blessed. I've been thankful that I've been welcomed as an ally and advocate in many communities and far before Web3. I like to say, I was the grand marshal of the LGBTQ plus parade back in 2003, and I was the cis white male that was welcomed in into that community. And I remember since that day, like learning and growing, and for me, part of the beauty of Web3, especially for those that identify as male that are out there, is that every women-led project, just about every women-led project, has been extremely welcoming, but also not only welcoming, but allowing us to find what is like our role in this culture, in this community, and how we can play a part. And I think for me, not only because that is something ingrained, but I'm also a girl dad. I have three little girls. That so in my heart of hearts, that like my true North Star is making a better life and a better world for my my three daughters, who actually just left here probably about a half hour ago, and they know the crypto chick NFT. Like they are very aware of it. And when I had picked up my second and third, I went with pink hair, so all three of mine have pink hair, and my daughter was like, are they going to convince you or tell you that you don't need another one with pink hair, daddy? And I was like, okay. I was like, I know I kind of love, leaning into my own, culture inside. And so, for those that, as Cryptochicks kind of grew, and I think as women-led projects were really kind of finally kind of getting the attention that they deserve, not because they were a women-led project, because they were great projects that happened to be projects that are led by women. There was also just kind of like this, I think of like the winter time frame, right? The December, January, February time frame of just this like emergence of like what does it mean to grow a project, and what does it mean to be more than just, if you launched a project last fall, you could pretty much sneeze and the project sold out, right? Like it was very much like, okay, here it is, but like, what does that mean? And I remember with when M was on the show talking a little bit about like that origin of Cryptochicks and where things had gone, and that brought us kind of into this year, right? And Cryptochicks walked in and faced some controversy earlier in the year, and I remember seeing it for me, right? And I remember it kind of coming across the feed, and as an advocate, and actually the episode with M had dropped like mid to late January, so it was very fresh in a lot of people's minds. And as someone that believes in change, believes in the power of great people, I looked at what was going on and like, hey, I want to assess, I want to see what's happening. And then as I think more things came to light, for me, my commitment and belief in Cryptochicks was really ingrained in the leadership, right? In the leadership and really the connection that so many in the community had. But talk to us a little bit about how was that, we're gonna bring on our special guest here in a minute, and we'll kind of connect some of these dots. But how was that, I can only imagine as that kind of was brought to light. And, for all those that are out here, as you're hearing Madi share this, there was no blueprint. There was no way of like, how do you make this work or how do you figure this out? And so give us a little bit of that background, I think, for our audience, and talk to us a little bit how that all kind of came to light in February.
Yeah. Personally, for me, paint the scene for you. I was still working at Facebook at the time and was involved in Cryptochicks more in like an advisory capacity. I was just helping out with some of the operational stuff. And I had a horrible week at work. Like I'm talking awake until 2:45 working, waking up at 6 or 7 a.m. to go back to work. That's atypical for tech. That's, we're not in finance in New York City. And so that's not a normal schedule. And that was really tough. And it was, just hard for me as a person. So, that Friday night where we started kind of buzzing and finding out about this, I was getting ready to go to bed at like 7 p.m. and my phone was vibrating so much that it fell off the counter. And I was like, oh my God, what happened? I thought something had happened to my family, honestly. And when I got on, I didn't feel relieved that it was not my family. I felt horrible. I was like, this is my worst nightmare. This is the exact opposite of the reason that I got into the space. And I think the rest of the team felt the same. We all got onto a call to even try to figure out. At this time, we didn't have any of the information, right? We were finding everything out on Twitter. We had no inside intel whatsoever. We're trying to get a hold of, Polly, who's like asleep in Russia. And it was really hard on the team, right? And it's not because we're feeling like we were in a situation where we were the hardest hit. It was just because we were all so disappointed because it wasn't aligned with our personal ethos and the reason that we had been working so hard on the project. Luckily, I have done a lot of outage management and designed standard operating procedures for how to deal with like escalations and crises in support organizations at Google. So leaned on that a little bit, but you're right. There is no playbook for dealing with this, right? And in a huge company, the standard operating procedures are, okay, you call the emergency on call who's in comms, you call the emergency on call in legal, in engineering, in product, and they all get together. And then you do have a single person who kind of runs the show, but you're not building that from scratch, right? That infrastructure already exists. And in this situation, we didn't have those people on call. And so we really did have to tap into and rely on a lot of connections to quickly form a cross-functional team that was going to be able to help and advise, so that this wasn't, led completely by us and it wasn't a blind leading the blind situation. And instead, we really got the right advisors to be able to help make sure that we handled this in the right way.
And for those that are listening, so like that, it was like that Friday, there was, some tweets and some screenshots being shared that said, hey, this art doesn't look original. And there were some people that were, tagging and saying, hey, we see art that is elsewhere that it looks like Cryptochicks. And for anyone that's seen Cryptochicks art, and this is a testament to Amanda and her vision, long before she was involved in the project, is it's beautiful. It's so well done in a way of being simple, yet, it brings to light like emotion and so many, variables in it. But, I remember seeing that and I was sick to my stomach, and it's not because I like as a holder of the bag, but also like, oh my goodness, this can, it happens every single day in the real world in Web 2, and it's been happening for far too long. But for many of us, we believe Web 3 is the chance for us to kind of reset, where it's not about, allowing people to steal people's jokes or, memes or, like F Jerry and that agency for what they've done for, comedians and that kind of things. But it was also, during that time, like you're finding out people are wanting answers. You're, not only as a team kind of figuring out how do we bring on all of these things to handle the crisis, but also there's like, what is the truth? What is the non-truth? Where does this go? How do we bring in, original artists? How do we figure things out? And I think doing that in a way where you also have 10,000 co-owners, right? And let's just put that out there for everyone. Like the most impatient humans that I believe exist, and I fall into that, right, is our NFT holders. But there's also this element of, wait, if this is true, I want to know what you're doing. But I don't think a lot of people allow if this is true to be given enough light to like kind of do that research and then also kind of move forward. Those early times, and then we're gonna bring in Amanda here in a second. Those that weekend and that kind of like that next time, as you were kind of coming on board more full time, you're kind of going through like what the crisis and what the decisions are. Not only was there no way to like blueprint of handling it technically publicly in this Web3 arena, but also like what did that mean for like the project, funds of the project, and then also like the future of the project. And for those that also don't know, they had just dropped the potion, and there was this idea of the next rendition of art that was coming. How did like as you kind of start to kind of weave through the truth and figure that piece out, I'm curious from those that are listening that are wondering like, oh my goodness, if that happens to us, what are the decisions on like how do we communicate, but also how do we make sure that we aren't communicating something that we haven't validated yet? How did you guys go through that kind of period?
Yeah, it's really, there's so much to do at the same time, and everything is super important. And I think that was probably the hardest thing for us to kind of navigate through, is like, how do you even go about prioritizing when everything is a P0 or everything is on fire, right? And so we were able to delegate a decent amount of work to experts, right? And so from a legal perspective, brought in lawyers for that. From a PR perspective, you have your team for that. And I think that's really important. I will say teams get very nervous about spending money to solve problems, and they'd much rather just kind of shove them under the rug and hope that they go away. But at the end of the day, getting an expert to advise your team is a really good use of your money, right? Like that's a good investment to make, and to make sure that you're doing it the right way, not only for your team, but also for everyone involved, right? Like it wouldn't have been a better outcome for Amanda for us to not have individuals advising us on this, because then there's a bunch of people that are running around who have no idea what they're doing. And so I think that it's really important for everyone involved to build their core team that they need to be successful. But as a project, you're right, we have 10,000 NFTs out there, and there are thousands and thousands of people that are holding these, that are sitting here saying, what the actual heck is going on? Not so nice of language.
Right.
But not only that, you also then have every concentric circle around every single holder asking what the hell's going on. And so you have all of these people who are not even your holders pouring in, and you often don't have the infrastructure set up to deal with that. And so we had to onboard a lot of mods really quickly. I ended up staying up. We were basically taking shifts across the leadership team, taking like 3 hours of sleep to make sure that there was always somebody online who could help and deal with anything or respond to things that came up and help to stabilize the team. Another really important thing is team culture, right? Like we bought a Starbucks gift card, put it out to the team, and said, everyone keep yourself caffeinated, well fed, get yourself a treat, go get your wife or your husband a treat if they are, dealing with you being online all of this time. And then also from a strategy perspective, getting together as a team and saying, what does this look like for us moving forward, so that we are able to really support the community. And for us, we basically took a zero-sum look at this and said, old Cryptochicks days are over, right? That is a different time. We need to decide what this new era of Cryptochicks looks like. And for us, that primary North Star was serving the community and honoring the community. And so everything that we looked at in terms of our new projects and initiatives was framed around the community. So honoring the holders of the Time Machine potions, even if in a different way, making sure that our OG holders felt like they were still connected and had a place in this new era was the most important thing for us.
And I, not only, and then from the outside, I just remember, I think I stopped counting at like 50 messages that I had got, and I'm not, I don't hold a giant bag, but for me, it was like, people are asking like, what are you doing? Or how are you looking at this? And I remember, I have, yet to be able to meet yourself or Em in person yet. We'll hopefully solve that in New York. Yes. In New York. And I was just, I was messaging Em, and I was just kind of saying like, I know that you have way more messages, and don't reply to mine, but here's just like me letting you know I'm thinking about you, and hoping that, that you're, understanding that a lot of this, is coming from, there's a lot of things going on, and knowing their support. And I also felt like there was an understanding, from a lot of people that, I was in conversation with, that like, we had to kind of look at this and say, this is a problem that we are going to not only continue to see, but we've probably seen earlier in this space in many ways, but it was never either brought to light or did not have enough kind of like, visibility on that. And so, I think the way that kind of all came, and of course, Amanda, who we've now, brought on here to the podcast, and excited to have Amanda on, and Jess is joining us to translate for us, for Amanda. But I remember feeling so bad for Amanda from a long distance perspective of not only this onslaught of, the NFT space, when they come heavy, right? And like, hey, this is what you should do. And, we jokingly say like, not financial advice, but everyone loves in the NFT space to give unsolicited advice on what you should do, what's best, how you should make things happen. And so I think it was such an interesting, thing from the outside to be like, what, I was thankful from my view that I was a holder, and that I could, be active in the Discord and watch some of the things that I could go on, so I could share even publicly. I think we did a podcast episode middle to late February, and I kind of just shared my take on it and on Cryptochicks as a whole. But I know also, like, Amanda gets kind of, thrust into this scenario, also there's, existing art, existing holders, there's contracts. And you mentioned like, I love you were like hired experts, but like, I know for a lot of us is like, how do you hire an expert that understands this space enough to where, you're not doing a lot of that education. So talk to us a little bit about how those, initial conversations went, with bringing Amanda into the fold. And I would love to, Amanda, I'm going to throw some questions your way and on how this all came to light on your side as well. But Madi, how did that kind of start to evolve early on with, Amanda being tagged in and figuring out what was kind of going on?
That was one of the things that we kept reminding our team in almost every single internal announcement was keep in mind that there's somebody, we don't want to use the words on the other side, but there's another person involved in this storm right now who had no idea yesterday when they went to bed that this was coming for them, right? And so we understand the space. We know who these people are. We are used to getting tons of messages on Twitter. Our skin is a little bit thicker. We've seen, like you said, things like this before. This is not the first time that there's been a huge public storm of pitchforks, but it's a very new experience for somebody else. And people are merciless online, right? Like my mom was getting messages somehow on Instagram. People found her personal Instagram saying like, you should be ashamed. You're lucky we don't know where you live. We would come for your daughter. I can't even imagine being on the other side of that where people's bags are involved, right? And so people feel like they have financial incentive to try to disprove and kind of tear down Amanda's story. And that's really toxic and is awful to deal with. And so that's one of the things that we still, Jess, Amanda, and the rest of the Phoenix team, we talk about a lot is like, how do we help make all of the holders advocates and champions so that we can kind of dispel some of this misinformation. So I think that's one big piece. In terms of finding people tactically, if anybody's listening to this, there are so many lawyers, PR teams that are really moving into this space. And anytime you send an email or a request for an intro conversation, before you even waste time meeting with them, you should ask them for examples and case studies of their work with other crypto and Web3 clients. Of course, everyone has to start somewhere, but you don't want to start with somebody where this is the first case they're ever taking in the space. So our lawyer, for example, Darren, give him a quick shout out. He's also the Gutter Cat Gang lawyer. He's incredible. And so I think that, you end up finding people that are really invested and embedded in the space. He himself is a huge NFT holder, so he really understands the community, the culture, and all of the principles. And finding people like that are helpful for you because you don't have to do any of that baseline education like you're talking about. You just don't know what their anonymous profile is in the real world.
Yeah. And I think that's, not only is it like finding the right mix, but also like finding people that can help take some of that off your shoulders. Cause even if they do know a little bit, but they don't understand some of the nuances, there's a lot that kind of goes into that. And so Amanda, thanks so much for jumping in. I can't wait to talk a little bit about Phoenix and the things that you have going on there. But if you don't mind, talk to us a little bit about like that February and those early days of finding out about Cryptochicks and like what that emotion was for you and kind of that onslaught of information that you were kind of inundated with.
Amanda, tudo bem? Ele tá perguntando como foi você descobriu em fevereiro sobre o que aconteceu.
Eu descobri, uma madrugada, eu não estava conseguindo dormir, e meu celular começou a vibrar muito, muito, muito. E um monte de gente começou a me mandar mensagem no Twitter. Acharam meu Twitter pessoal no Twitter, no meu Instagram pessoal, no meu IG de desenho. E mandaram inúmeras mensagens com os links, dizendo que meu desenho tinha sido copiado, que tinha gente ganhando milhões com isso. Foi assim, foi surreal.
She said it was really hard and weird at the same time. She was woken up in the middle of the night because her phone was vibrating and flashing so much. And she realized that something was up because people start messaging her on her personal Twitter, her personal Instagram, and the professional ones as well. When she does have a big audience already, but it was a bit weird. And they were messaging in English when her audience is all Brazilian. So she, at first moment, thought, have I done something wrong? What happened? And yeah, so she got scared at the same time. She didn't understand why people were saying, oh yeah, look at this. And there were people sending DMs with links that had, of course, the Cryptochicks page and the video, that probably everyone has seen that video with both arts traced one after the other. And then obviously, even though she doesn't speak English, she understood what was going on. And people were messaging saying, oh, someone's making millions out of it. You have to do something. But yeah, that's basically how she found out, because she didn't know anything about the NFT space, and obviously nothing about her art as well being used.
Yeah, I appreciate that context. I'm curious, Amanda, from a standpoint of, as you're realizing that, there's someone that had copied what your creative work was, what was the first like instinct? Was it, let's get them to take that down, or let's, I can't believe they're doing it. What was like that first kind of, emotional feeling that you felt as once it kind of things slowed down a little bit?
Quando você descobriu e entendeu o que estava acontecendo, qual foi o seu primeiro sentimento, a tua reação? O que você ia fazer? Pôr o projeto abaixo? O que você pensou? Qual foi a sua primeira reação?
A minha primeira reação foi ter raiva. Eu fiquei com muita raiva porque eu achei muito injusto aquilo, sabe? Você receber mensagem, olha, tem alguém fazendo milhões com um desenho seu que você criou, que você postou já há anos atrás, enquanto, tipo, viver de arte, principalmente no Brasil, é a maior dificuldade. Então, assim, tem gente ganhando milhões com algo que você fez e que você não tá ganhando nada. Então, eu acho que um sentimento de raiva e de injustiça muito grande, sabe? De impotência, porque, além de tudo, é algo que eu não entendia, que eu tive que aprender, e vinha um monte de gente me falando A e B, e foi realmente muito confuso, foi raiva, confusão, sentimento de justiça, de impotência, foi tudo junto.
She felt a lot of anger because when she found out someone was profiting so much about on her art, something that she made, and as an artist living in Brazil, who lives a completely different lifestyle, a completely different background, her reality is completely different to many people who are involved in this space. Her reality is from someone who wouldn't be able to take money to invest. So it was really, really frustrating to see her work being used. And she said she felt that it was really unfair, especially because not only she didn't know anything about space, and she had to learn about the space to then understand better what was going on. And so it took a few days. And she felt really angry also because she realized that many people were taking her credit and saying that she was not the artist. So it was quite painful for her to see, someone's profiting from my art, but and at the same time, they're saying that I'm not even the artist.
Oh, I mean, I feel that pain deeply, and I respect, and I think we just have to own that feeling, right? I think we sometimes even, from the artist perspective, not only realizing that some person, might have taken your art and profited, but also just even the idea that, people don't believe me that it's even my art, because there's like that they don't want to believe what they don't see. And I'm curious, Madi, and you're kind of coming on to Cryptochicks full time in that sense around the same time of a lot of this going on. When you brought in lawyers, some experts that are knowing the space, there was also an understanding of like, not only was Polly in Russia and working with the project, but understanding, okay, what are our possible options? Like, what are the things that we can't do? And I will say that from the outside, I just want to put this out there. There are a lot of artists that probably wouldn't have taken the time to learn the space and to step in and kind of welcome of what Amanda has done. There's a lot of project leaders and founders that we know would have just given up on the community, given up on the project, backed out. How did that, like when you were first coming through, like how can we make this work best for everyone? Madi, give us a little bit about like, how did that kind of relationship go? And it couldn't have been easy. It also had to be a lot of education all the way around. So give us a little bit of insight into that, initial kind of conversation with Amanda and the team.
It's funny because one of the things that people ask and I is, what did the conversation look like for you all to decide, like, we're still going to do this and you're not just going to walk away? And Em and I kind of laugh when we talk about this because we never even had a conversation about us walking away. I mean, the conversation was, okay, Madi, when are you going to quit your job? Right. And so that was, I think, that's different than what we would see from a lot of project teams in this space, where we have seen people rug or run away for far less. But that wasn't a conversation that our team ever had. It was figuring out, how do we move forward? And ultimately, we decided that the only way for us to do that was to have a new era of Cryptochicks that did not associate with the founding team. And that seemed like the best way for us to be able to move forward and to only have people involved that were 100% aligned with the mission moving forward and weren't, associated with any of the wrongs in the past. We also felt better about that from the perspective of bringing Amanda in and being able to say that we had really made a clean break and had a conversation with her about, this is a totally different team than the team who had originally done this, which I think is important. Like, in the conversations that we've had with Amanda and her team and the lawyers, is that's a really important aspect of this resolution, is that this is a different group of people that also stepped up, that are honoring the community who were, associated with this. And that goes a really long way. And I think, you said earlier, the reason that you still held and that you're still invested and bought in is because of the leadership team. And we hear that time and time again from everybody. That was one of the most popular things that came up on the pulse check that we did with the community in the middle of this, was the belief in the leadership team, as in the new leadership team. So leaning into that was really important. I also think taking a really humble and honest approach to this and saying, our mission is to support women. And even though we didn't make this mess, we want to work on cleaning it up. And we are willing to do what we can to help, and even come up with other ideas for ways that we can help support the new project, right? Like, Phoenix is really Amanda's opportunity to make a name in this space and retain that ownership and autonomy and being able to kind of carve out her own destiny in Web3. So what can we do to help uplift her there and make this more of a positive story moving forward, rather than having her whole story in Web3 be what happened to her before she even got involved?
And this is such a Web3, experience, right? Because the idea of the founders of a company that create, a movement and fans around an art and an experience, that then, there's this element of how are, them being removed, and having new, not only new, leadership, but also, bringing in kind of establishing an all new culture, is a very Web3 thing. But I also think there's something that really important for us to remember, is that the amount of artists that continue to be ripped off and their things stolen and are never notified or never aware. And it is this shame of so much that so many creatives that are probably in a lot of the scenarios like what Amanda was in, didn't have the opportunity to kind of have those people kind of coming and saying, hey, we passionate and love the art. I'm curious, from Amanda, from looking at now figuring out how to work with Cryptochicks and the team, how does Amanda feeling about the project as far as current involvement and how it's going to move forward?
Amanda, ele está perguntando com relação a como você se sente agora que tudo foi resolvido, e como você se sente agora sabendo que parte, né, da resolução significa que você vai, de certa forma, estar recebendo muito apoio do projeto Cryptochicks.
Foi assim, né? Foi um tempo assim para a gente se ajustar e entrar em um consenso, mas eu acho que isso me deixa mais tranquila, sabe? Não só em relação a tudo que me causou, assim. Eu fiquei muito ansiosa, sabe? Mexeu muito com a minha cabeça, mas saber que agora eu posso contar com esse apoio, que obviamente vai ajudar na minha coleção, e eu me sinto, assim, muito mais, tranquila, sabe? Em poder trabalhar sabendo que eu vou ter esse apoio, que as pessoas vão conseguir ter acesso direto, assim, à minha arte e se interessar ainda mais por ela, que vai alcançar mais pessoas. Então, eu fico, sabe, relaxada agora em poder trabalhar melhor até né? Poder me dedicar ainda mais à coleção, às raras que estão vindo. Então, com certeza ajudou muito. E tá ajudando muito, né?
So she said, of course, it needed a lot of time for them to adjust to each other, to understand, especially to understand what was going on. And because it involved a lot of hate coming from people who didn't understand, and the silent was a big enemy in the situation because we didn't like too many people talking about things that they didn't know. But when they adjusted to in a way that she understood this new perspective, now she feels a little more relaxed about everything. And because this whole situation brought her a lot of anxiety, and that affected even how she felt about art itself. And now that this situation has been sorted and solved, she's more happy and relaxed to move on, and she feels happy to have this support because she knows in the end how this was not caused by the people who are trying to help and bring her this support that she's having now from not only the CC team but the CC community as well.
I think that's, one of the things that we spent a lot of time talking about with everybody on the call, and also, some of the other team members, is there was so much misinformation out there, right? Where like people didn't understand that the founding team had parted ways. They didn't understand that Alyssa, myself, and the current CC leadership team didn't have all of the money from Mint or from secondary sales prior to when we took over. And I think that people also don't understand what's going on behind the scenes, right? And how long some of these conversations take when you do end up having like legal experts and people involved who should be involved, right? It's really important that it's done the right way, but that takes a lot of time. And Web3, the space just does not give a lot of time, right? We move at light speed. And so I think there was a lot of misinformation, and that kind of built up a lot of flurries. But in being able to kind of cut through some of the BS and the noise that's out there on Twitter, I feel like, we have a good group chat going. We're kind of brainstorming every single day, like different ideas. So I think there's a lot of really good things coming. Phoenix is an opportunity for people to really invest in Amanda being able to rewrite her story in Web3. So I'm hopeful that we'll see a lot of positive momentum around that moving forward.
I mean, and I was jokingly saying about, being most impatient, humans as NFT holders, but I think it's actually, I believe it's unacceptable as a whole that that we put a lot of that pressure. Like, we can say like we want a roadmap and we buy an NFT, and on the roadmap it says 30 days out they're going to have a video game, and 60 days out they're going to be a Netflix sitcom, right? And we have to take a step back and recognize there's not any way, shape, or form that is even possible. But I also think, when it comes to humans, right, and understanding, we have to take a step back and recognize like these are all new variables, right? And the fact that like Amanda is like thrown into this and didn't ask to be not only bombarded, but kind of all of this kind of pressure on there. And then also with the new founding team coming on and saying, okay, where do we have to like to the today, and then how do we move forward? And like I remember like one of the things, and I said it here on the podcast, back on I think it was around episode 100, is I said like for me, whatever had happened between Cryptochicks and Amanda, my belief was I was going to take equal money that I had invested in Cryptochicks and invest in whatever Amanda was going to roll out. And in my view, that was a way of saying, hey, we were figuring things out in one way, but I was going to, like fully make that a big advocate side. And then, as I had messaged a little bit and was like, hey, is this going to be a little bit, is there something, beautiful here in the future? And so I love that things have kind of come to life. And I would love, Amanda, share a little bit about, Phoenix. And I actually set up on the pre-mint today. So I got my name on there, but yeah, Amanda, we'd love to hear a little bit about Phoenix and that upcoming project.
Amanda, tá pedindo para você falar um pouquinho sobre o projeto Fênix e o que significa para você. O que você quiser falar sobre o projeto, pode falar.
Bom, o projeto da Fênix foi o que mais me interessou, assim, em participar. Eu achei muito legal, sabe, ver mulher apoiando mulheres, assim, e foi o que mais me chamou a atenção. O nome surgiu justamente, eu acho que por essa volta que eu dei na Web3 e poder voltar das cinzas, digamos assim, né? E é exatamente por isso o nome Fênix. Essa coleção ela significa muito para mim, e o número da coleção também, o número de imagens, ele foi justamente por conta do ano que eu nasci, né? O ano de 98. E a coleção também vai trazer a Karma, que foi a personagem que me trouxe para esse mundo. Então, assim, eu tô muito animada com isso. Na coleção também não só vai trazer a Karma, como vai trazer alguns detalhes dela, tipo o terceiro olho. A gente tem algumas raras que eu não compartilhei no Twitter, as pessoas ainda não viram. E eu tô fazendo com muito carinho, tô tentando ser o mais perfeccionista possível. A gente tem um plano que inclui posters e até mesmo moletões personalizados para quem mintar certos números de NFTs, inclusive um deles para quem mintar 20 ou mais de um NFT personalizado e exclusivo, claro. A Fênix é um projeto incubado pelo Projeto Fortuna, e assim como Fortuna, que tem uma ligação forte com a caridade no Brasil, como a Beleza Escondida, que foi um abrigo de mulheres e crianças que recebeu $50 mil, vindo do Projeto Fortuna, a Fênix também vai estar buscando o bem da comunidade fora da Web3, porque é importante para a gente, né? Uma das maiores utilidades do projeto é fazer parte de algo tão positivo como a minha história no mundo dos NFTs, porque apesar de como eu entrei de forma negativa, o restante da trajetória não será.
Right, I'm gonna try and translate to the simplest way. But yeah, for those who are unaware, despite of receiving lots of hate messages, she received a lot of invitations and people wanting to work with her. In the end, she chose to be part of Phoenix because for her, women supporting women empowering women is one of the most important things. If you are familiar with her art, like if you had a look on her Instagram, you see that her art previously already was part of a lot of empowering and making sure that every woman is special and empowering in relationships and your self-love and all of that. But yeah, Phoenix has this sentiment for her. It's very important, and we all know the phoenix meaning, the bird that comes from the ashes, and she thought it makes a lot of sense for her Web3 story. And, she came into this space in a very not nice way, let's be honest, but she has a lot of potential. She knows she deserves as an artist so much more than just one drawing. And Phoenix is what her opportunity to show her art and to show that the Web3 offers you this opportunity to turn a bad situation into something positive. And like Madi said, she doesn't want her story to be attached to something. One thing, Amanda is a very strong woman, and she's been a victim of a situation, but she's not gonna let her story be led by that. And so yeah, the number of the NFTs is 9898 because 1998 is the year of her birth, so it's important for her. She even made some layers that represent that, and she's including Karma, the famous character that we know got famous. She's including Karma and so many elements of Karma in Phoenix. Phoenix will be minting probably in 3 weeks. It's still to be announced. And she also wants Phoenix to be related to charity, just like Fortuna, that is the project incubating Phoenix. But yeah, the community will be connected, and she thinks not only, of course, there will be perks, different types of perks, such as merch that will be connected to multiple domains. But one of the things that she wants people to always remember, that one of the things will be when you mint one Phoenix, you will be minting and saying that you believe in this Web3 change. And that's the most important thing. You are part of this difference that you're making into the space.
I love that. And I mean, the art is amazing. We're going to include all the links in the show notes. Make sure that we have people that are, that check out the pre-mint. I mean, the website is amazing. I just love the art. And, born in 1998 made me feel a little old there. But I will say, the idea that, Amanda is really inspiring, not only, current generations, but future generations on, what is possible. And I believe this is, a story that ultimately becomes, I think, empowering for hopefully, other artists and creators that end up, unfortunately, in a situation, but hopefully it's also one that is showing that, like, we no longer will be okay with people that are copying or stealing and taking others, art and representing it as their own. And there are ways to, push forward this. And I think the Phoenix name, rising from the ashes, is like beautifully tied there. So we will definitely support. And actually the incubator side of the house is actually one of the projects that we minted here on Mint 365 as well. So we have some fun ties as far as just, the projects that we're involved in. So, Madi, I'm as you kind of look at, Phoenix, and what are some of the things, like from a Cryptochicks perspective, how those things are going to kind of work out. And, it's kind of a beautiful synergy that there's, kind of both moving forward. And I also just commend both of you for both projects being very transparent on the announcement that happened just over this past weekend. I think it was very easy to brush over everything as if it was all sunshine and rainbows, but I think it would have done a disservice for, all of the work that both sides have done. So I want to put that out there just to both teams, being very open and transparent. I read both threads on Twitter, and I'll share those links in here too, because I think it adds, some really levity to this, a much larger project or much larger, scenario than most people realize. But talk to us a little bit, Madi, about how Cryptochicks is moving forward and kind of align with Phoenix.
Yeah, we didn't want this to be a rose-colored glasses, whitewashing situation of what was really hard, right? Like both teams spent a ton of time working to feel like we were getting to a good place, that we could move forward in a positive way, but that doesn't mean that everything was always positive, right? And so I think it's important to be authentic and represent that piece of this as well, in order for people to really feel like we were taking this seriously. So thanks. I appreciate you saying that about all of the threads. And I think a lot of the engagement that's been going on behind the scenes across the teams really speaks to the fact that we're bought into this and being a collaborative effort and trying to do everything that we can to really like walk the walk and not just talk the talk in terms of supporting. And I think Sarah tweeted out like such an Sarah, who's one of the founders of Fortuna, who's helping to launch Phoenix, tweeted out a thread that was so nice about challenging, preconceived notions and being open to kind of having flexibility of mindset. And I really appreciated that. I think that that's a really nice thing for people to hear about in Web3, because it's very easy for us to get stuck in our ways and believe one thing and then never change our minds on it. So I think that was great. In terms of moving forward, we're really excited. I think that there's, the market is tough right now. No getting around that in the spirit of being authentic. But I think that this is about more than just like a project. This is about kind of reclaiming a narrative. And I think that that's important. So the pre-mint, we can put the link down below in the show notes as well. It's also in the Cryptochicks Discord in our announcements channel to win allow less spots for Amanda's new mint. We also have like some fun competitions that we'll be doing on social media to get free Cryptochicks stuff to support and bring visibility to the Phoenix project. And then we have a couple other like top secret things that we're thinking about to get people really excited and build some like organic momentum in a way that's innovative and different than what projects have done in the past, because I think this is a very different launch than what we see in the rest of the space. And it's important to make sure that we're approaching it that way too.
Yeah, and I hope for those that are listening, right? When we think about these times, I think we have to be very not only strategic, but we have to make sure that the impact that we are using, the ETH that we do have, no matter what its value is at the moment, for causes and beliefs that are going to make a difference and an impact. And I also think it's powerful that it's a women artist and a women-led team that are coming forward and setting a new standard, a new belief, and maybe we can start writing better into original contracts to prepare for some of these things that, let's face it, none of us were, prepared for. And I think you said, that piece of perspective, right? I would challenge anyone to like put yourselves in the shoes of any of the players that have been involved and ask you like, what are you tapping into from like how we can make this better? And I appreciate the transparency. I also, not whitewashing and not, putting it under a rug. And, for those that are in this space, like, I like to tweet out a lot. I say the blockchain doesn't lie. And I partially that is like, we can't let those that shy away and allow these things to, hey, let's wait a couple months. If the market goes down, we can just come out and people will forget what had happened. And that's the Web 2 way that allowed us to walk into a world that was not only people were stepping on people, but we had, things like we needed a Me Too movement to recognize this, horrible, culture and environment that we've kind of empowered throughout our culture. And so I think there is something beautiful, especially even, from, Brazilian artists to be able to inspire others. I will say, from my three daughters, to our Amanda, I had actually, caveat to my daughters, can't pick Cryptochicks or can't pick that art when you're picking your favorite NFT, because they all three were picking that art from that standpoint. So there's three little girls here that, were touched by, Amanda's art even before, the conversation. I think the beauty of that is now with Phoenix, we can also get involved and support, and we will, without question here for the podcast, we will mint that into our collection, which I think is kind of a beautiful bow, and we'll make sure we share some things out as we go on that as well.
I also think it's important to keep in mind, like this is a one of those historical collections, right? This is an opportunity to be involved in something that is, in a way, the first of its kind, where unfortunately women artists, particularly women artists of color, have, for a very long history been undervalued for the work that they've provided. This is an opportunity to really recognize somebody and also basically get like a memento of this occasion, right? This is you can meaningfully stand by and say, I was a part of making this a success for somebody. And that's a unique opportunity.
And I will just say that, there's also just this element of like, if we are all growing and becoming better humans and better things together, there's a lot of problems that we are going to approach that we don't have experience dealing with, because we've either not had the opportunity because of what society has kind of decided to kind of make an example of the world around us. But there's also a lot of opportunities for us to figure out ways to, like, what do we learn from this moving forward in all of our projects? How do we help connect the dots? But also, how do we pay homage a lot into projects that are of that value? It's why I bring up Fame Lady Squad as well as a project that, as soon as I heard that original story, I remember buying it. And, my Fame Lady Squad sits next to my Cryptochick in my ledger, the two that are, kind of like, it's like, that's where they're going to belong. And that's kind of like the treasure trove of projects that have some great, not only, kind of setting the way of community-led, reimagination of what these look like, but also, there was, I think for those that left, Cryptochicks and for their own right reasons and for their own beliefs, I think there's something, beautiful about kind of like looking at that. And I think during these current times, I think it's important for us not to Monday morning quarterback or go back and like a whole bunch of what ifs, but just to think about like, okay, what are the things I care most about? And what are the things that I want to be a part of? And for me, it's a no-brainer in the idea of like, how can we really set a new bar in Web3 that doesn't just continue on these trends of the ways in the past. And this is a beautiful example.
I also think there's something to be said right now for, a lot of people are consolidating. And I think that the way to do that is to consolidate into projects that you think have staying power. And I think a good signal there is if the team has gone through something really hard and come out the other side of it, you get good signal on their commitment, their operating capacity, their leadership style, their resilience, right? And those are things that are really difficult to get signal on in a space that's otherwise like based on anonymity, and a lot of projects have only had like rosy colored experiences so far. So I, from a responsible perspective, I think that there's opportunity here to invest in projects that you feel confident in leadership teams in. And I feel much better investing in a company like Fame Ladies because I know that they have gone through something that's really tough and they've been able to write the business. They have the commitment and the skills needed. And I think the Cryptochicks is another one in that bucket.
Yeah, and for all those that are project founders or working with project founders, I worked in cybersecurity for 10 years, and the thing we just always kind of promised was, it's not about, how do I prevent from getting hacked or how do I stop, a security vulnerability? It's like, how do I deal with it when it happens? And what am I prepared to do and how, committed I am to it? And so for every project, it's an unfortunate, component of this world where you will have crisis management. You will have things that you are going to have to adapt from. It'll have different scales. It'll come in different ways. But the projects that are pushing through, that not only are pushing through to make the project better, but I believe to make the whole space better, are the ones that we have to champion, are the ones that we have to, believe in. And, I would just say, like, as we look at, the Phoenix, like for me, watching that project, be successful is also a testament to our commitment to believe, like, how do we remove the starving from the starving artists? And how do we make sure artists that have been violated and their art has been stolen are championed? And, it's one thing for us to talk a good game in Web3. I'm going to challenge everyone that listens to this. Like, we need to back it up. We need to actually back up and support, the projects and the people that are really willing to, set this new bar. And I hope that, we even, as we move forward and there's others that come across this, it's now becomes like, okay, here's an example of how we work through it and continue growing, these use cases. So, Madi and Amanda and Jess, thanks for translating. I know I talk a lot and I talk fast, Jess. So this is a challenge across the board. So I thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Jess, for being involved. And Madi, I want to throw it to you one more time, like from what's looking forward to. I know we're going to get to hang out in NFT NYC. I got to book under the Cryptochicks block there at the hotel, so I can get to hang out with all of that family and all those amazing holders. Talk to us a little bit about the future of Cryptochicks and what you're looking forward to.
Yeah, I think, right now we're very focused on NFT NYC and supporting Amanda and launching her new project. For NFT NYC, we're so excited to get to meet people in person. I can say that every single person who tells me they booked in the room block, I'm just like, can't wait to walk by everyone in the halls. We have some great events that are unfortunately fully sold out, but we do have wait lists available. We have a podcast that we're coming out with. So we put out a call for people to recommend individuals that they'd like us to chat with. Hopefully we can get even anywhere close to your high quality production value and make sure that it's a good experience for everyone who joins. And then we also will be focusing on our new collection. So honoring, like we said, the time machine potions that everyone got. We have some really cool creative ideas that we're talking about there. And then the design collective. I think a lot of people are really excited about that in terms of supporting women artists, women creatives. There's a lot that are being left behind. And so making sure that we're building out an incubator program to support them in developing the skills and launching their new collections, which will be basically paired digital and physical wearables, is really exciting. So we had a meeting today where we went through all of the curriculum and talked about the different mentors and sections that we'll have. And I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I could go through this. Unfortunately, I'm not a designer and I have no creative skills, so I will not be, but it should be really cool. And so I think there's a lot of fun stuff coming down the pipeline that is keeping the team really energized right now.
I love that. I look forward to New York as well. And I'm going to bring, Jess and Amanda back in. Just, I'm excited for what is possible around a lot of this space. I think this is a beautiful time for us to rally behind, each other and, bet all in on the humans that are here. And and Cryptochicks, the merch came out. I know in our Discord, lots of people are taking pictures of the merch that they received. Mine is actually at my post office. I just haven't been able to go over the post office to pick up my merch there as well. And excited for, the time potion, and also even just, there's a beautiful story. Like, we're buying an NFT every day here because we wanted to create kind of a time capsule of a year in NFTs. And I think that we sometimes forget, like, this time capsule, right? When we look back at February, a year from February, and we can kind of assess, what does all of this mean and all of this impact and all the hard work that has been put in. I think there is, there's not only beautiful things that are to come, but I think that is the beautiful byproduct, product of Cryptochicks. And, I would love for, I'll give the last word kind of to Amanda, as, I love that, she joined us. We were able to kind of make this, bring these worlds together. And, as a fan, I'm curious, just Amanda, for any last words, anything that, Amanda wants to share about Phoenix or about this experience. And we'll close it out after that.
Amanda, a gente já tá acabando, então ele tá perguntando se tem alguma coisa que você queira falar antes da gente acabar, alguma coisa, alguma mensagem que você queira deixar para a comunidade ou falar alguma coisa sobre o projeto.
Eu tava falando com o microfone desligado. Mas vamos lá. Eu quero que a minha coleção ela seja um exemplo, e ela dê um exemplo de como as mulheres são fortes e que mostre que a Web3 ela recompensa os artistas, mesmo havendo algumas maçãs podres presentes, como em todo o mercado. O bem sempre vence e eu tô desse lado do bem, fazendo o meu melhor para representar as mulheres na Web3 e para representar meu país, que ainda sabe tão pouco sobre isso.
Yeah, she really wants Phoenix to be an example of how women are strong, and to show that Web3 can really reward the artists and the good people, the good ones who have faith in what's real. Even though there are like bad actors everywhere, but she thinks, in the end, the good always wins, and she's on that side, like all of us here. So she's doing all her best. She wants to ensure that she's giving all her soul and art to her art for this collection to be like unique and to be transparent to her sentiments and everything, in like the way she feels when she's drawing, and she really wants that to be remarkable. And also she said something about Brazil.
Buscando. Não encontrei nada na internet sobre onde Fênix anexar pouco H com acento agudo.
That's my Siri. I'm so sorry.
Technology these days.
Activated without me saying anything. But yeah, she also said that she wants to be representing women, and she wants to be representing, after all, she wants to be representing Brazil as well, because Brazil is a market. The Web3 is not present very much in Brazil. So she wants to be representing the country with this collection.
I love that. And I've had the luxury and pleasure to visit Brazil only once. I've been to 76 countries, but I've been there once, and I fell in love instantly with, Brazil and the culture and the people. And I think Web3 hopefully will allow us to continue to, discover and amplify amazing, artists and creatives like Amanda, and also empower and inspire the world. And I think this is for me, this is a beautiful example of, what is possible in Web3, and this wouldn't, have come to light this way in Web2 and in many of the variables, every kind of turning part. And I think the beauty of this is that it is about what can we, learn, what can we empower, and how can we get great, talented, creative, like what Amanda is creating out to the world. So Madi, thank you so much for jumping on. I was super excited to have you here on the show. Excited to hang out in New York. Amanda and Jess, thank you so much for joining as well.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, guys. And for those that are listening, I know we have those that are listening on live and those that are listening on the podcast. I will make sure the show notes are there, in the, the links are in there. And just know also when you click on the, pre-mint and some of those things, it can say add to your calendar, right? There's a beautiful thing that we might operate in a real-time world where things are always changing, but if you can put things on your calendar, we'll do our best to remember or remind people. And I think the other part of this, I'll just challenge us all to be better, to be more empathetic towards those that are going through these type of scenarios, or even just trying to handle anything that is coming their way. A lot of this is new. A lot of this is uncharted, and sometimes it's not only unwanted, but it's in ways that we have to kind of really tap into who we are as humans. And I'm blessed to be surrounded by some amazing women here on this show, and so many in this space. And I think we have a long way to go, but I think these are great examples that when people talk about these are just JPEGs, or they don't understand the power of NFTs, I think this example of an amazing Brazilian artist that unfortunately was violated, just like it happens in countries and worlds and artists around the world, but we're able to now change that narrative, and hopefully now take Phoenix and support that project and be involved in that project, and continue on growing with what all that Cryptochicks has to offer as well. So until tomorrow, my friends, I know this was a long one, but it was well worth every minute. Make it a great day. Cheers, everybody.